Imagine a place so steeped in power, so drenched in wealth and privilege, that the very thought of losing it sends its guardians into a state of blind panic. Now, picture this. One man, Pope Leo XIV, a leader of the Church, decided to rip it all away in a single night. No warning, no hesitation. Luxury, privilege, status. All of it abolished. And the elite cardinals who once ruled Rome, trembling in fear, caught in a web of uncertainty, left to question, why now? But there's something darker here, something the Vatican desperately wants to keep buried. What could have driven Pope Leo to make such a radical decision? What unseen force pushed him to challenge centuries of sacred tradition? Tonight, you're going to hear the secrets the Vatican tried to silence, the truth that Pope Leo XIV risked everything to expose. And I promise you, what you're about to learn is nothing like you've ever heard before. Prepare yourself, because the Vatican's darkest secrets are about to surface. And the question is, are you ready for what lies beneath the surface of Rome's most sacred walls? Why did Pope Leo XIV turn against the Vatican elite? Type truth if you stand with Pope Leo, and subscribe to uncover Rome's hidden mysteries. For years, Rome whispered about cardinals living in secret luxury, behind ancient walls, hidden mansions filled with opulence no ordinary Catholic could ever imagine. The finest wines, the rarest jewels, servants to cater to every whim. A life that seemed almost divine. But was it? Was it truly a life of divine right? Or had the Church strayed so far from its humble beginnings that it became unrecognizable? The lavish halls of the Vatican echoed with the sounds of laughter, of wealth, and of privilege. But the whispers never stopped. And those whispers grew louder over time, slowly turning into something more, something dangerous. There were those who said the Church had forgotten its purpose. There were those who said the cardinals, those men of power and prestige, had become more like kings than shepherds. And in the darkest corners of Rome, there were rumors of corruption so deep it threatened to swallow the very soul of the Vatican. But was this wealth merely privilege, or something darker hidden beneath? Some believed it was all about control, the power that came with wealth. Others whispered that the cardinals' obsession with luxury wasn't about personal gain, but about something far more sinister, something rooted in the very foundation of the Vatican. Could it be that these men, draped in gold, were hiding secrets far more deadly than anyone dared to imagine? Why else would Pope Leo XIV, who himself had lived in the shadow of the Vatican's wealth, suddenly take a stand against it all? Was it truly a fight for the Church's soul? Or had he uncovered something even darker, something that forced him to act with the speed and decisiveness of a man driven by a greater purpose? The truth is, no one knows for certain. The records were hidden, the whispers were silenced. But one thing remains undeniable. Pope Leo XIV did not act without cause. Something made him burn with a need to change the Vatican from the inside out. Was it a prophecy? A divine warning? Or was it simply the truth that only those with power could see? Only those who dared to look beneath the polished surface of Rome's grandeur. Because in the end, Pope Leo was not just challenging the luxury of the Vatican. He was challenging something far older, a system that had thrived on secrecy, wealth, and power for centuries. And in doing so, he stepped into a firestorm that none could predict. Can you feel it, brethren? The weight of history pressing down on you. What would you have done if you were in Pope Leo's place? Would you have stood up against the forces of tradition, knowing the consequences? Or would you have stayed silent like so many others before him? Tonight we unravel the mystery that's been buried for centuries. The very same mystery that Pope Leo XIV tried to expose before it could be buried again. This is not just about the past. It's about you. It's about the choices we make when faced with the truth. The question is, will you be brave enough to see it for what it truly is? Picture this. The grand halls of the Vatican, filled with treasures beyond imagination, paintings that could feed 1,000 souls, and gold so pure, it could blind the eyes of any who beheld it. For centuries, the Church had been a symbol of sanctity, of divine light. But behind the gold and the marble, behind the gilded altars and the priceless relics, a darkness had begun to settle. A darkness no one was willing to confront until Pope Leo XIV dared to look it in the eye. Some will tell you that Pope Leo's reforms were simply the actions of a man who saw the excess and arrogance of the Church and knew that something had to change. But what if there was more to it? What if there was a force at work that went beyond earthly corruption? What if Pope Leo wasn't just fighting against human greed, but something divine? A divine calling, perhaps, that demanded he strip the Vatican of its facade and expose the rot underneath. It's said that the Pope spent nights in prayer, his face wet with tears, not just for the suffering of the poor, but for the suffering that came from the very heart of the Church. Could it be that he saw something in the shadows, something so terrifying that it pushed him to make his ultimate decision? We may never know the full extent of what Pope Leo saw in those quiet hours of reflection, but one thing is certain. He believed that the Church had lost its way, and to find its true path again, it needed to be cleansed, purged of the luxury that had corrupted it, purged of the men who had sold their souls for power. But the price of such a decision, my friend, was steep. Imagine the fear, the panic that swept through the Vatican. These cardinals, men who had grown accustomed to lives of unimaginable wealth, suddenly faced ruin. They had been kings in their own right. Only now, Pope Leo had taken their crowns and cast them aside. Can you imagine the weight of that loss? The terror of seeing everything they had built come crashing down in the blink of an eye? And yet Pope Leo did it. He tore down the walls of privilege and exposed the Church for what it had become, a symbol of earthly grandeur instead of a beacon of humility and grace. But in doing so, he awakened something else, a force much more powerful than the cardinals or the Church itself. What if this wasn't just a simple battle for power? What if Pope Leo's actions were part of something much larger? Something beyond the Vatican? Beyond Rome? Was Pope Leo a man of faith? Or a man chosen to fulfill a divine prophecy that no one, not even he, could understand fully? Could the Pope have been chosen for this purpose long before he ever set foot in the Vatican? Was his heart, broken by the state of the Church, truly guided by a higher power? Or did he fall victim to a plan that was set into motion long before his reign began? And what of the cardinals who once ruled with impunity? What did they know? What secrets did they hold? And why did they react with such frantic desperation when Pope Leo's decree echoed through the Vatican walls? Were they protecting themselves, or were they protecting something much darker, something that even the Pope could not see in its entirety? You see, my friend, this story isn't just about one man's rebellion against the system. It's about the very soul of the Church, and Pope Leo XIV was willing to sacrifice everything, his reputation, his legacy, and perhaps even his life, to reveal what lay beneath the surface. Some of you will say, Pope Leo was a hero, a man of faith who stood up against the tide of corruption. Others will say he was a fool, blinded by his ideals. But one thing is for certain, the world would never look at the Vatican the same way again. So, I ask you this. If you had stood in Pope Leo XIV's shoes, knowing what he knew, would you have made the same choice? Would you have been willing to expose the deepest secrets of the Vatican, no matter the cost? Or would you have stayed silent, accepting the comfortable lies that had been told for centuries? Only one man had the courage to do what Pope Leo did, and as the dust settles on this chapter of history, the question remains, did he free the Church, or did he destroy it from within? You've heard the whispers, brethren. You've felt the weight of history pressing down on your shoulders. But the question now is, will you choose to follow in the footsteps of a man who dared to reveal the truth? Or will you remain in the shadows, where secrets have been hidden for far too long? The truth waits for no one, and neither does time. And as the dust of that fateful night settles, we are left to wonder, what price did Pope Leo pay for his truth? Did he truly believe that by tearing down the walls of luxury, He could restore the Vatican to its pure, humble roots? Or was there a deeper understanding at play? A truth that he alone could see, but which the world was not ready to hear. Perhaps that was his greatest burden. He saw what the Church had become, a kingdom of wealth and indulgence, and he knew it was no longer a beacon for the faithful. It had become a fortress of secrets. But to reveal those secrets, to strip away centuries of tradition and comfort, required a strength that few men could ever muster. And yet, Pope Leo stood alone in that storm. Alone, but not truly alone, for the whispers of history seemed to guide his hand. The whispers of those who came before him, those who knew that for the Church to remain a light in a dark world, it would have to humble itself once more. But here's the thing no one talks about. The power that had been held by those cardinals, those men who lived in luxury, was not just wealth. It was influence. It was control over the very direction of the Church. These men were not just rich. They were the gatekeepers of truth, the ones who controlled what Rome revealed to the world. And when Pope Leo tore their power away, he didn't just shake the Vatican. He shook the very foundation of the global Church. And think about it. Why would the Vatican go to such lengths to protect its image? Why would they go to such extremes to suppress the truth that Pope Leo sought to expose? The fear wasn't just about the loss of luxury. No, it went much deeper. It was about the threat to their authority, to the centuries of control they had over the faithful. Perhaps in the end, Pope Leo realized that no matter how much he tried to strip away the layers of opulence, no matter how much he tried to expose the hidden secrets, the very fabric of the Church itself, its foundation, was built on a lie that had been hidden for generations. And that truth, brethren, was too dangerous to be fully revealed. So, as the cardinals retreated, their faces drawn with panic and fear, what did they know? What secrets did they guard so fiercely that they would rather see the Vatican burn than allow Pope Leo to destroy their world? We may never know the full extent of what they were protecting, but one thing is certain. Pope Leo's decision opened the floodgates to a truth that no one could have ever anticipated. The question now remains, was Pope Leo's sacrifice worth it? Did he save the Church, or did he fracture it beyond repair? And in doing so, did he expose a truth so profound that even the highest powers in Rome could not keep it hidden for long? Perhaps the answer lies within us, brethren. Perhaps Pope Leo's story is not just about the Vatican, not just about the cardinals or the papacy. Perhaps it's about the choices we all face when confronted with uncomfortable truths, when we are forced to look at the power structures around us and ask, what is worth preserving, and what must be dismantled for the sake of something greater? Because you see, the truth is rarely easy. It is often uncomfortable, painful, and sometimes it forces us to question everything we thought we knew. But the real question isn't whether the truth is worth it. The real question is, are we brave enough to seek it out? Are we willing to stand with those who dare to challenge the status quo? To expose the lies, no matter the cost? Pope Leo XIV did just that. He challenged the darkness, and he paid the price. But in doing so, he set a precedent that will echo through the halls of history. A reminder that sometimes to save what you love, you must first tear it all down and rebuild it from the ground up. So what about you? Will you stand with Pope Leo? Will you seek the truth no matter the cost? Or will you remain in the shadows, where comfort and safety hide the very things that need to be seen? History, my friend, has a way of burying its most uncomfortable truths, of silencing those who dare to reveal the darkness beneath the surface. But sometimes those truths manage to slip through the cracks, rising like a whisper from the depths, calling us to pay attention, to wake up. And Pope Leo XIV was one of those rare individuals who heard that whisper. Imagine it. There, in the cold silence of the Apostolic Palace, Pope Leo sat alone, with only the flickering light of his candle illuminating the room. The weight of centuries of corruption, of greed, and of false holiness pressing down on him. It was then, in that moment of solitude, that the decision was made. A decision that would rattle the foundations of the Vatican and send shockwaves through the corridors of power. The decision to rip away the luxury, to tear down the walls of the false piety that had become the true face of the Church. And do you know what he did next? He stood up. He took a pen in hand and wrote his decree. No more would the cardinals live in excess while the faithful starved. No more would the wealth of the Church serve the selfish, the powerful. The time for truth had come, and nothing, not even the forces that had ruled Rome for centuries, could stop it. But here's the thing. Pope Leo knew what the consequences would be. He knew that those who benefited from the Vatican's wealth and privilege would not go down without a fight. That's why his decision was not made in haste. It was made with a heavy heart, a heart that understood the price of exposing the truth. For the truth, as we know, is never easy, it's never simple, and it always comes with a cost. And so the cardinals reacted. Fear spread like wildfire. The Vatican, once a place of unquestionable power, now felt fragile, vulnerable, like a house built on sand. The pillars that had supported it for centuries, the wealth, the privilege, the secrets, began to crack. And in that cracking, the very foundation of the Church was exposed for all to see. Could you imagine? Could you imagine what it must have felt like to be one of those cardinals sitting in your palace surrounded by wealth and luxury, knowing that it could all come crashing down in a single moment? To have everything you've worked for, everything you've lived for, stripped away by the hand of a single man? The panic, the fear, the desperation. They must have known that Pope Leo wasn't just attacking their privileges. He was attacking the very system that had kept them in power for so long. But here's the twist, my friend. The fear, the panic, the anger. It wasn't just about the loss of power. No, there was something deeper at play here. Something that the cardinals and even Pope Leo couldn't fully comprehend at the time. The truth they were both fighting over was so profound, so dangerous, that it threatened not only the Vatican but the very fabric of faith itself. Because when you strip away the luxury, when you tear down the walls of deceit, what's left? What remains when all the masks are removed and the false piety is gone? The answer is simple. What remains is the raw, unfiltered truth. And that, brethren, is a truth that the Vatican, for all its power, has never been able to fully face. And so, as the years pass, as the history books are written and rewritten, one question remains. Was Pope Leo XIV a hero who sought to restore the Church to its true calling? Or was he a fool who dared to uncover a truth so great, so terrifying, that it would shatter the very heart of Rome? Maybe the answer isn't something we'll ever fully know, but perhaps, just perhaps, the answer lies within each of us, in the choices we make, in the way we see the world, and in the way we choose to confront the truth when it calls out to us from the shadows. Because the truth, my friend, is never easy. It is never comfortable, and it never comes without a price. But it is always, always worth the cost. And Pope Leo XIV, whether he realized it or not, was willing to pay that price. A price that the Vatican, for all its power and wealth, could never fully silence. And so, the question remains, are you ready to face the truth? The same truth that Pope Leo dared to see? Will you walk with him into the darkness, knowing that what lies ahead may be more than you can bear? Only you can decide. Will you stand with Pope Leo XIV? Or will you turn away, content to live in the shadows of a world that refuses to confront its own secrets? The world, brethren, is full of distractions, full of glitter and noise, of things that promise us comfort and security. We're told to look away from the darkness to avoid the uncomfortable truths that lie beneath the surface. But what if, like Pope Leo XIV, we must face the darkness to find the light? What if the very act of confronting the uncomfortable, of tearing away the gilded facade, is what leads us to true freedom? Think about it for a moment. Pope Leo didn't just attack the power of the cardinals. He was going after the very foundation of what the Vatican had built over centuries. He didn't just strip away luxury and privilege. He was peeling back the layers of deception, the lies that had been fed to the faithful, To you and to me. Lies that have been told for so long, they've become accepted as truth. That's the hardest truth of all, the truth that we often live within the lies we've been fed. And for Pope Leo, this wasn't just a battle of words. It was a battle for the soul of the Church, a battle to save the very essence of faith itself. If he had stood by and allowed the Vatican to continue down the path of luxury and excess, the Church would have become nothing more than a hollow shell. It would have been a place where the faithful were nothing more than a means to an end, a place where the heart of Christianity was smothered beneath a mountain of gold and deceit. But he didn't do that, did he? No. Pope Leo saw the danger, and with unwavering resolve he chose to expose the truth no matter the cost. He chose to tear down the walls of privilege, to strip away the comforts of the powerful, and to face the consequences of his actions. And the consequences were severe, weren't they? The cardinals, those men who once walked with their heads high, their hearts heavy with the wealth of the Church, now faced ruin. Their power was gone. Their influence shattered. In an instant, everything they had built came crumbling down, and they were left with nothing but the fear of what was to come. Imagine what it must have felt like. Those cardinals, once untouchable, now stripped of their status. Can you feel that fear, that desperation? Their world, the one they had built with such care and cunning, was crashing down, and they knew deep in their hearts that they had no one to blame but themselves. They had allowed the Church to become something it was never meant to be. They had let greed and power cloud their vision, and in doing so, they had lost their way. And Pope Leo, in his own quiet way, did what no one else had the courage to do. He ripped away the veil of false holiness, exposing the truth beneath. But here's the harsh reality. The truth he uncovered wasn't just uncomfortable, it was terrifying. It was a truth that no one, not even he, could fully understand at the time. So I ask you now, what do you think? Was Pope Leo XIV a hero for daring to confront the darkness of the Vatican? Or was he a man too blinded by his ideals, too eager to challenge centuries of tradition, that he tore apart everything the Church stood for? Perhaps the answer is somewhere in the middle, hidden between the extremes of heroism and folly. Because the truth, as always, is complex, layered. It's not just about one man, one decision. It's about all of us. It's about the choices we make when we're confronted with the uncomfortable truths of our own lives. Do we embrace them? Or do we turn away, burying them deeper, hoping that they will go away on their own? Maybe you've faced moments like this in your own life. Times when you knew something wasn't right, when you knew that things needed to change but you weren't sure if you had the strength to act. Maybe it was a relationship or a job or a belief you held on to for far too long. And in that moment, you had a choice: to face the truth, no matter how difficult, or to turn away and hope it would just work itself out. Pope Leo faced that same choice. He could have stayed silent, allowed the luxury and corruption to continue, and perhaps his reign would have been a little easier. But instead he chose to act. He chose to risk everything for the chance at something better, something truer. And now, the question is yours to answer. Are you willing to risk everything for the truth? Are you willing to tear down the walls of comfort and convenience to expose what lies beneath, even if it means facing the darkest parts of yourself? The truth, my friend, is always waiting for us to uncover it. But the real question is, are we brave enough to face it no matter the cost? The choice, as always, is yours. You see, the story of Pope Leo XIV is far from over. In fact, the question of his actions, his decisions, and the truth he sought to uncover will continue to echo through the halls of history, long after the Vatican's wealth and power have faded into the shadows of time. But there's something we must all understand. Pope Leo was not just fighting for a better Vatican, he was fighting for the soul of the Church itself. His sacrifice, his challenge to the Vatican elite, may have seemed like an act of rebellion to some, but to others, it was a divine calling. A call to expose the darkness, to unmask the hypocrisy, and to remind us all of the true purpose of faith: humility, service, and truth. But let me leave you with this final thought. The Vatican, like any institution, is not just made of stone and gold. It is made of people. People who, for better or worse, have always shaped its destiny. And while Pope Leo may have torn down the walls of luxury, he was also laying the foundation for something new. Something that might just change everything we've ever known about the Church, and perhaps even about ourselves. And this is where you come in. The story of Pope Leo XIV is not just a history lesson. It is a call to action. It asks you, the viewer, the believer, the seeker of truth, what are you willing to sacrifice to expose the truth in your own life? What are you willing to face in the darkness? And what walls are you ready to tear down? Pope Leo faced a moment in time that asked him to choose between comfort and truth. And in doing so, he changed the course of history. But the question is, will you stand with him? Will you make the difficult choice and expose the truths that have been hidden in the shadows for far too long? Some say that the greatest leaders in history were not those who held power, but those who knew how to give it up. Pope Leo XIV was one of those leaders, and the true legacy of his actions may only be understood by those who are brave enough to ask the hardest questions of all. Are you brave enough to seek the truth? Are you ready to follow the path that Pope Leo set into motion, no matter where it leads? The journey isn't over. Not for him, not for you, not for any of us. Subscribe now to join the search for the truth and discover what Roman history is still hiding. Type truth if you stand with Pope Leo, and let's uncover the mysteries together.